Yeah, the revelations now televised. A platform for you and I. And now look with full heart and clear eyes. Now, these are just my thoughts. Truth on how I feel on these topics I reveal. Please know my toll, I always keep it real. Can't face the word if you can't face facts. For your time, just open up your mind. That's it, just live, think big, now take that. With God in me, this here was made by design. Yeah, the revelation will be televised. REVELSations.
Okay, here we go. We're here with David Shaz. I said it wrong, but we'll get it correctly. He is a colleague of mine at the Columbus School in Medellin, Colombia. And David, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, I appreciate this. I've been wanting to do having this type of conversation for actually some years. But I'll be honest, I wasn't comfortable enough to ask questions because I'm really good with people asking me questions that they're not comfortable with, but then I realize that I'm not good at asking questions that I think might. So we'll talk about. But before we dive into it, how about you let the people know a little bit about you personally, where you're from, what you do, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I am from a little rural town called Powell Butte in Central Eastern Oregon.
Okay.
And yeah, I grew up in that little tiny community, which we'll probably end up talking about a little bit later, and then went to university at Oregon State University, became a biology major after changing majors several times like people do. Biology major to teacher, and I've been a science teacher since then, teaching all the different science subjects.
And about how long have you been in the classroom as a teacher?
Just finished my 11th year.
Oh yeah, vet in the game. There we go. We got some years here, vet in the game. So we like to say, I'm not new to this, I'm true to this, which means this is what I do. I do this through and through. So that's cool, man. And so you've been in the classrooms, and just in general, over your last, before we dive into the topic, of course, we're talking about homosexuality, etc. And I'd have some general questions, and I am very ignorant to that community. I understand it's very prevalent, but I'll be honest with you, I do not personally, in my personal circle, right? And when I say my personal circle, do I know people who are openly in the LGBTQIA plus? I think that's all of the acronyms. If I miss something, hey, it is what it is. In a minute, it's going to be the entire alphabet. That's how I feel. But, so if I miss something, please forgive me. But I don't have anybody that I am closely connected to that is open in the space. Now, I'm sure somebody is doing it in the background because they might feel ashamed, etc. But we want to unveil that shame. We're not trying to shame anybody today. So that's what we're going to discuss. David, of course, I asked him, through some text messages, and we got on this thing. So it's really good. So my first question would be like your experience. I want to talk about you. Of course, you're not a monolith. You don't speak for the entire LGBTQ community, but you are a representative, and you might be the only voice that many people hear in this space where it can be conversational. So maybe they're talking through me and you're talking to them directly. So let's a little bit of background on this is going to sound really weird and archaic. When you knew you're coming out, that, I mean, again, I'm ignorant, so I'm going to say some ignorant things, but please educate us.
Yeah, no, I agree, especially in our community where we work. Like there's I definitely feel that I am one of the only people know sometimes, and feel free to talk to, and also kind of give representation for those in our schools and things, especially where they go, oh, I'm kind of like this guy, even though at the moment I don't want to be open and out about it. At least I know somebody who's there. Yeah. I think if I go all the way back to when I first remember, I think the first time I can remember like realizing that I was different than like my peers and things like that was probably in the 4th or 5th grade.
Okay, so
all the way back.
This is 9 and 10 years old.
Yeah, just super young. I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know what it meant to be gay, or what it meant to like boys or girls. All my friends who were boys were all flirting with girls, and I just had no interest in that, and I didn't have any interest really in flirting with anyone. But they were all like experimenting with dating and things, and I was just like, yeah, I'd rather just like go ride bikes or something like something anything else. And so it wasn't really until seventh grade that I started to be able to put a word to it, and where in seventh grade kids started using the word. Oh, in my time and when I was growing up, uh, that's gay was used a lot. I'm really
I
happy
used
to
it.
hear that that's not so common anymore. But
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And so that was really common right about the time I went into middle school. And so that's when I started learning what it meant to be gay. And I started kind of like putting it together like, oh, this is actually more how I identify.
Okay.
And I grew up in a place, I do remember a time about that fourth or fifth grade time when I remember a story when my dad and I were checking the mail at our little small town post office, and I asked him like little kids do. I go, Dad, could you marry me? Like, just innocent little kid things that kids do. And he turns around and he goes, and this is going to give you kind of an idea of the kind of the way my family thought about things. He goes, David, no, men do not marry men. You
Mm,
had better never come home and tell me that you're gay.
mm,
And
mm,
so I'd kind of grown up with this idea that like that that was bad. And
mhm.
so when I realized that that was who I was, I went, "Oh crap, this is bad."
So,
So
so
yeah,
you thought there was something wrong with you.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
And
explain that feeling inside. Like, this is me, this is who I am. But being authentically me, there's something wrong with that.
exactly.
Okay.
And so it was tough too because my family wasn't super religious, but my mom's side of the family is Pentecostal, and there's that influence that comes down on that too.
Yeah, I know about that. Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
and so I I was started about the middle school time. I started hearing it from my family, like, this is bad. You can't do this. This is not how it should be. And so I purposefully and I prayed in when I was a middle schooler and high schooler, and I would literally spend my time just praying, like, please let make this go away. I don't want this to be a
Oh,
thing. Like,
wow.
I can't let my family down. Oof, I'm starting to feel
Mhm.
emotions. That's not good.
Yeah. No,
Like, it
yeah, I get
digs,
it.
it digs.
Hmm.
Um, so like it was just like, this can't be the way I am. I can't let my family down. I can't be this person. And so I dated girls all the way from middle school through my senior year in high school, just trying to like make this go away. And uh yeah, that's not what ended up happening. But um yeah, so there was definitely a lot of shame that it felt like there was a lot of shame being brought on because I was going to let my family down. They weren't going to have grandkids. They were going to kick me out of the house, all of these things. And as a kid, I didn't know any gay people at all. I had no adults to turn to. I had peers that were gay, but they were kind of on the extreme fringes of, those cliques and things. And yeah, so growing up it was really really tough in terms of just trying to figure out who I was and trying to make myself um kind of be what's, I don't know, my family wanted me to be and what society wanted me to be. And I actually remember a time too, another time in high school when I grew up in a really rural town in Oregon, and you would actually hear kids running around going, "Oh, if you're gay, we're gonna," these are like these are the kids that drive trucks with guns in the back, and like those. And so
I get
there
it.
were
No, I no. Trust me, I understand. I understand. I grew up in Illinois, and not Chicago, and then I live in Texas, right? So I get it. Like,
yeah.
trust me, I get it. Yeah.
And there's this extra fear that because they'd run around going, "Oh, if you're gay, we're gonna tie you up and drag you behind our trucks." And it was a scary time to grow up. For me, it was one of the most, middle school, early high school especially, were like the most fearful times for me as a
Mhm.
kid.
Mhm.
And we'll talk a little more about this later probably, but like that's one of the reasons I feel so passionate about this now as a teacher, having kind of these safe spaces in my classroom for kids who don't need to come out, but at least knowing that they have at least one adult role model that can be like, hey, you're safe here no matter who you are. Those people that are bullying you can't get in here to do that to you. So
Okay.
I didn't even just zooming through to college a little bit, I started coming out to my friends in early university years, maybe 2 or 3 every few months, and started experimenting with the idea that, oh, I can actually be who I am. And I didn't even come out. I came out to my parents. I'm 34 years old, and I came out to my dad 2.5, almost 3 years ago. So
Wow. Whoa, whoa.
yeah,
Okay. So let me say something. Wow. So 21, so let's say 10-ish when
yep,
you start feeling different, and then 31 when you tell your dad.
yeah,
21 years of not being able to be who you are with I don't know if your dad or your entire family. Can you with again, I'm not trying to get all into your stuff,
yeah,
but
no worries.
I like that would not sit well with me and my soul if I couldn't be myself for 21 years with my family. Can you tap into that a little bit?
Yeah, it was tough. And I often tell people, because I think my dad was very insulted when I finally told him that he was like the last person I really truly had to come out to. And I think he was kind of insulted in a way because he felt like I couldn't talk to him about those things.
Mm. But you
And
were remembering when you were a child and what he said.
mm,
Ah, okay.
yes.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
And I tell people all the time, I go, the people that are hardest to come out to are the ones we're the most afraid to lose, because they're the ones that are,
Let's not speed past that. Let's say that again, because I think that's strong, that's heavy there. The people, say it again.
yeah, the people that are the hardest to come out to are the ones we're most afraid to lose.
Mm.
And so for me, my family is super important to me. I have a very small family. My mom died when I was 19, and
Mm.
it's just my dad's side of the family. And so if I'm like gonna lose the only family I have, that's a really tough thing to deal with. So they were like the last ones I came out with, and I was actually married for a few years, and I was actually already married legally before I even came out to my dad.
So when you
Yeah,
say married, so because I'm confused and I want to make sure our audience understands, you were dating
yeah.
women, but you were married. Like when you got married, you were married to a male or a female.
Cool, man. So I stopped
Okay.
dating. I stopped dating women. My senior year was the last woman I dated. Yeah,
Okay. I didn't know because and there see, so I'm a big definition person, and there's these words we throw around. So they like we have the word beard, right? We understand what that means, like when a
yeah,
gay man, and I'm not, I have a beard, you have a beard, right?
yeah, yeah.
We so I didn't know. And again, if I'm clumsy with my questions, please forgive me. My heart goes out to you with the mother thing. I lost my mother, etc. So I understand that man, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So
No, it's
yeah,
bad. It's bad.
that's
Yeah,
it's bad. It's bad. And then the situation with your dad with you not feeling comfortable, but then I can understand because he's saying, son, I love you, I love you regardless, but he doesn't remember his knee-jerk reaction to when you were 9 or 10 and you
yeah,
said, can I marry you? And he's like, you better never. But as children, that sticks in our head. So I was asked yesterday, just a side note, and just to share some vulnerability with you. I was with my cousin yesterday, and he lives here in Medellin as well. And we were hanging out, and he said to me, Rev, why do you never want to have kids? And I was like, do you want like my answer or you want the real answer? He's like, we're cousins, you got to give me the real answer. I said, because my dad, my biological father, told me I was a nuisance. So I feel children are always going to be a nuisance. I was 11. I asked my dad, my parents split up. I was 11. I asked my dad, Dad, can I come live with you? He said, I don't have time to raise you. I'm too busy.
oh my goodness.
Right. To an
Yeah,
11-year-old. So now kids take up your time. They are now a nuisance. So what I heard at 11, I'm playing out at 41. 30 years later, I'm still playing that out in my life. And to this day, I don't want children. Right.
yeah,
So you, for 21 years, you're playing out in your head, I better not bring a guy home. I better not do this. And then your dad's like, well, what happened? Dad, but you don't remember what you said to me?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I remember, and he probably doesn't. He said it
He
flippantly.
Yeah, he doesn't remember it. I've
So
actually asked him about it too, and he just doesn't remember it at
he
all. And
doesn't
I'm like, I
remember.
remember it like it was yesterday.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, because those things stick with us, man. So I hurt for you. And man, just the not being able to talk to your family, and like you said, we're afraid. And people, and I'm not saying you were lying for 20, 21 years to your dad, but you were just not being all the way open. And people like, oh, when you lie, you're not open. You're being misleading. Yeah, but what's the reason behind that? A lot of times it's because we don't want to lose something.
Yep.
Right, or lose someone. So that's why. So I appreciate, man, what you've gone through, man. That's a tough situation, and thank you for your story. So the married thing, I don't know when gay marriage was legalized. What state did you get married in? Those types.
Oh, I actually got married here in Colombia.
Okay.
So because I've been here in Colombia for about 6 years, and I started dating a guy right when I got here.
Okay.
And we got married after dating for 2 years, and ended up, probably won't talk much about those details.
No, yeah, it's
Long
okay.
story short, that relationship ended, and yeah, and so we got married on paper, because we were planning on moving to the US, and we wanted to get started on some of that legal stuff to go to the US. And so we were going to actually have a formal ceremony the following year, and that's why I had to ended up like having to come out, because I wanted my dad there. And
yeah,
fun story about actually coming out to him. I did it by email because I was just way too afraid to do it. And he responded like within an hour. He responded, and he literally goes, "David, I don't care that you're gay. I'm more mad that you want Bernie Sanders to be president." and so I just started like bawling, laughing at the same time, because I was just like, oh, amazing, he loves me, but also he cares more about this thing that doesn't matter than
yeah. Well, that's awesome. So how was that? That had to be a great moment, right? That my dad does accept me, and then the reconnection between like there had to be well, I don't know if there had to be, but it seems like there might have been a reconnection of the relationship where not reconciliation. I'm missing the word there, but okay, Dad, now you accept me. Now we can be closer.
Yeah, my relationship with my father is probably the best it's ever been now.
That's awesome.
And it's still not amazing. We still we definitely have set ground rules. We can't talk politics, all those things that some families do. And I think it actually goes a long ways to show how society has changed over, I would say, about the last 10 years before, because he started watching shows like Modern Family, where the main characters are a gay couple, and so it's starting to become more prevalent. And I think that had a huge influence on him too, just kind of growing as a person. And yeah.
Okay. So with that, so you said something that will lead us into our next. And again, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, that was super vulnerable, etc. And I think vulnerability begets vulnerability, right? So if we're both men here, and we'll get into that in a second, the identity, because you said you identify as gay, so etc. And just a thought popped in my head. I have never in my life identified as heterosexual. I just am, right? I don't think about my sexuality because it is the norm, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Right. It is the norm, and I don't mean, well, normal denotes. I mean, maybe it's the standard. Actually, yeah, that would be the better word. It's the standard. There's a standard set. It may not be a fair standard, but it is the standard. And I've never thought about like, how do you identify? Well, I'm just me, man. I'm just a man. I guess I'm heterosexual, but if you were telling me to list things, heterosexual would be low because I just am.
And then for me, it kind of goes the opposite way. And this kind of brings up an interesting idea for me, because just being is kind of like the ideal. That's where we all kind of want to be. We just want to be. And so for me, because I kind of am forced to think about it, being homosexual is a little bit way higher under my, when I put my list of identities down, it's probably number 2 or 3 on the list.
So what I've learned is this, and I've done studies I've read things and I've asked people typically identify with what they are persecuted for. So if you ask me what I am first, what would you guess?
I would probably say black man.
Yes, I am black. Before I'm a man, I am black. I identify as black first. Why? Because that's what people hate about me. the most.
Yep.
That's when life is being a burden to me, that it's because, or I at least interpret it's because the color of my skin. So therefore, and heterosexual, I don't get any flack for that. So it's way down on the list. So my identity first is Black.
Right.
So there you go. I think we learned some here. And just for conversation's sake, I was doing some research as you and I were talking. Same-sex marriage around the world. In the United States, it said 36 states and the District of Columbia legalized same-sex marriages. 2015, before the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the constitutional guarantees throughout the entire country. So 2015, and then just for sake of Columbia, 2016. Gay marriage was legalized in Colombia. And I think the reason it had to be legalized is because in the etymology of the word marriage, in the original form of the word marriage, it was a partnership between male and female. So therefore, when they put marriage on the books, it was between, so literally two men could not be married because it was by the dictionary definition of what marriage means. Right. So then you had to do some changing, and that's why all the way to 2015 Chile, 2022, and yeah, that seems like the latest from the list that I have. Slovenia as well. So there's still some countries lagging behind. There
are still countries where you can be sent to jail and even stoned
Uganda.
for.
Have you watched the Uganda stuff lately in Africa?
I have not.
Let me just give you a quick synopsis. If you would like to be, and I would even agree with this. If you would like to be disgusted. Now, I'm an American, and I don't like how we as North Americans try to be the police of all the world. I don't really agree with that. You got to let people do what they do. In Uganda, though, there is a law that you can be sentenced to life imprisonment or death for being homosexual.
Yep.
Like, yeah, they're not playing around.
They don't play around.
Yeah, they're not playing. They're like, hey, and then they came out and said, we're here to protect our families, etc. That's a whole different conversation. We're not talking about Uganda. We're talking about this. So you came out safe, etc. And how have you seen from the time you were 10 till now you're 34 that the world has changed in accepting the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, I think back to this, and I remember back in 2004 when Oregon, I actually remember the day that Oregon banned gay marriage, because Oregon was one of the states in 2004 that actually they voted to ban gay marriage, and before all the courts and things got involved with things. So I feel like there's, and I don't know if I can speak greatly to the changes I've seen in the world. I would say easily things have become a lot more accepting.
Mm-hmm.
I think things are in the media a lot more. I've seen a lot more families. I think one of the most powerful things for me is I've seen a lot of family structures change. Okay. So a lot of older generations saying, you know what, we have a problem with this, but you're our family. We still care about you. And I see a lot more of those. Like, even I have an uncle who's 80 something years old, and oof. He when he called me one time after I came out to my family, and he was like, well, I heard you made a decision. And
he's 80. What is he going like? You gotta exactly. Just okay. He's accepted it, right? I heard you.
I was like, you're still talking to me. This is a good start. and he was just like, but he still calls me and says, hey, can you help me with my cell phone and my computer issues? And I think I've seen this change, and even though I don't like it, you're still important to me. And I think that for me has been one of the most powerful changes that I've personally seen that actually impact me on a kind of a more of a daily basis.
Yeah. Right. And I can, this is going to sound weird, but I can understand why people would say, I don't like what you're doing, but I accept you. Because the religious space, especially, not only the religious space, which we'll touch on just for a brief moment, but also just the societal norms and standards. Like, I don't like the lifestyle you live. So I get it, right? Because I've said things like that before. I love you. I don't love what you're doing, right? But as long as I can love you, we can get past it. And I've noticed that, like, with your dad and that was your uncle.
Yeah.
And even with others, this is going to sound weird. You, as the person that's coming out, et cetera, you actually have to have more grace for the people and their understanding, et cetera, right? So your uncle says something to you that some might find offensive. So you made a decision, but what did you immediately say? Well, at least you're still talking to me. This is good.
I'm
right?
so happy you're still talking.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that's the grace and love that you have, that you aren't, I wouldn't consider you a bitter person. I wouldn't consider you scorn, where you're just like mad as hell and everybody, that type of thing, even though you've endured years of not being able to be yourself. So you've seen the world change. I've seen the world change too. I believe that we're almost overcorrecting. And what I mean by that is I think people should be represented. I think the community should be represented, but it's going to be, and this is where I may, you can push back on me or et cetera. I believe it's overrepresented. And what I mean by that is, when you look at Pew Research and polls, et cetera, like there's a small percentage of the population that identifies as LGBTQIA, but if you watch mainstream media, it seems like it is in every aspect, and it may be in every aspect. I'm not saying it's not, but what I mean is and what I've witnessed, what I believe in myself, and what I've heard from other people, and I don't want to act like I'm outside of that circle, is almost an oversaturation or a force feeding. So what would you say to the people who like me in a way feel like, okay, well, now we're being force fed this idea of LGBTQ, etc.
Yeah. I would say in the United States,
Yeah, this is US speaking, right? We're
yeah,
the US audience. So
totally.
yeah.
I think the most recent statistic I read was that 7.2% of adults in the US identify as being part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah. Super low. It's low
And
people would think. People think it's like, 30 or 40. I'm like, no, the world wouldn't continue to grow in population if 40%, because from what I understand in my research, homosexual couples will, just by nature, cannot produce a child. Right? Let's just it cannot happen. So if we have more homosexual people, we'll have less people, but the world population keep growing. So I think it's impossible for that many to be,
And all right, yeah, I would say I also feel, and I've been kind of out of the media for a while, but I would feel like I see it a lot more. I will agree with that statement for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about this, I actually have these conversations a lot because I also am trying to learn I'm just trying to learn all these things too. And even my current partner would argue that like media is almost like demeaning these populations. Like even he most recently brought up Ariel being black as being like, well, isn't it demeaning to just like force these populations into these positions? And I'm like, I don't know. So I also have these conversations where I just don't fully have an understanding of it. But I would say with like the LGBTQ community, I think my gut reaction is to say almost, so with the statistic being 7 point something percent that do identify openly in the US, it's probably a little bit higher for people that don't want to come out. So even if we moved it to 10%, we'll just keep it at 7%. I think if 7% of the time we were seeing that, great. But I also feel like when I was a kid, I never saw LGBTQ characters unless they were portrayed, and this is probably similar maybe in the 70s and 80s with black characters. When I was a kid in the early 90s into the early 2000s, I never saw an LGBTQ character unless they were being demonized in some way.
Okay.
And so for me, I feel like there's a power in being seen in a positive light. And so I definitely can feel why some people will say, hey, this feels like a lot and it feels like you're shoving it on us. But also, I think if we were truly honest with ourselves and we look at our, let's say, friend groups or people we hang out with, I think we're there a lot more than we know too.
Of course.
And so
one thing, and I want to ask you a question about that. So we'll get to the Ariel thing with your partner, because I have something to say about that. We'll go back to that in just a moment. But my question is, sometimes it seems like to me in media, etc., they put sexuality in when it's not needed. So for example, I'll just give you an example. So I was watching the show, and I'm a big Marvel guy, and I was watching this show called Hawkeye, and he needed some help with something, and a lady was just giving the guy a duffel bag, and she was like, "Here," and he was like, "Okay," and then the lady was like, "Make sure I get that back. That's my wife's bag," right? A lady said that, and I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. The lady's gay. I don't have a problem with it," but it was like the show went, I don't want to say out of its way, but it wrote that in there. And it's almost as if the woman's sexuality had nothing to do with what was going on in the scene. It was just, so it's almost seemed, it's like almost intentionally adding it in there when it has nothing to do with the story. So like if you and I are talking about sports, let's say, for example, my sexuality and your sexuality have nothing to do with the fact that we're talking about who won the basketball game. But it seems like media would inject, I should say, something about homosexuality in a space where, well, that didn't have anything to do. That's not the topic. It's no one's sexuality, heterosexual or homosexual. So I don't know if you notice that, your partner notices that, or if I may be way off base here, but that's what I see.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't personally say that I've ever felt like it's been pushed in. I've never,
Okay.
I don't watch a whole lot of media anymore. And,
Okay.
but I'm trying to think if in my everyday life, if I were doing something, for me, if it's something that would flow naturally, like if I was like actually lending my partner's bag to someone, I don't know. That's a good one for me.
Yeah.
This is part of those reflections for me as well. So
right. And we don't always know. And really quick, the Ariel thing, the reason I have a problem with people having a problem with Ariel being black is because Ariel is not real. There is no such thing as a mermaid. It was a cartoon, man. So Ariel was never white. It was a cartoon, right?
That was my point. I'd never thought about it before. I was like, it's a story.
Mermaids don't exist, right?
Right.
Like, they're not real. So I have more of a problem. Just a sidebar. I do have a problem when movies, etc., depict Jesus as a white man. That is not true. Jesus, the person who is Jesus, whether you believe that he is the Christ or not, that's up for debate. Him existing is not up for debate. There's too many historical records of that person existing. That person was not a white person. That person was not European. That person was Arabic. But that person is depicted as white in most movies, etc., and no one seems to have a problem with that. But for some reason, when we take a fictional character, a cartoon Ariel, make her in real life a black person, the whole world blows up. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. It's weird. That's
totally. Yeah. And my partner was asking me, because he's also trying. We have these really great talks all the time, and he's trying to learn too. And he's just like, he was like, it just seems like it might be demeaning for the black population, or even if they were to purposely add a gay character in there. He's like, doesn't it seem just like they're just forcing this in there in ways? And so he was trying to see different perspectives and trying to get me to see different perspectives. And at the end, I was like, it's a story. I love that she's there.
So I see these parallels. A lot of times people will equate the struggle of African Americans or people. I got to stop saying that. People of African descent, because we are persecuted everywhere. Doesn't matter. Like, totally. So people of African descent and the homosexuality community. And while I can jive with it in some ways, I'm like, right, but hold on a second. Hold on. I think there's a line that we cannot cross, to where, like, my people were stolen from their country, taken away,
totally.
400 years of slavery / apartheid / Jim Crow / everything. And I'm like, these two things are not the same. And I don't want to compare scars. So I want our plights to go in the same direction. But I've heard things like, well, as a black person, you should understand my gay struggle because you go through struggles too. And I'm like, these things are not equal. They are not the same.
I agree. They're not the same. I think, and the reason I agree with that the most, I think there are definitely parallels for sure. The reason I agree with that is because when I'm walking down the street
There it
I
is.
can hide that I'm gay. No one looks at me and goes, "Oh, that guy's gay."
Yep.
Um, you cannot turn the
Nope.
color of your skin
Nope.
off.
Soon as I
So
walk in the room, that's a black
I
dude.
I mean, I'm a pro. I hit it for 20 some years, right? Like,
Right.
and I still, if I'm walking out in public, I can hide it
Yep.
as I I turn it a little bit. It's a little bit harder for, I think, the trans community to hide.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other thing. There's some other like some of those gender identities that I'm sure we're going to get into soon.
Yes.
It's a little bit harder. Like when I paint my nails, like right now it's Pride Month and I have my
Yes.
nails painted, and those are things that are harder to hide, but those are optional, right? Like I can turn those off if I need to.
Yes.
A person of color is not turning their skin off.
Nope.
So
Nope.
yeah,
Don't want to and will never, etc. So we're at TCS, the Columbus School, and we get a lot of students who they do skin lightening treatments and facial reconstructions, etc. I mean,
jeez.
we're in high school, and how many of them kids had those come in with the big bandages on their nose? I'm like, you got your nose done? You're 15, but
Yeah,
whatever. So we were talking, I teach history, so here's the cool thing about history. We get to talk about everything in history. I can bring up any subject and it passes, right? So we talk about LGBTQ, we talk about racism, sexism, everything in history. And I was like, I would never get my nose done or have bleaching my skin. And they're like, why? I'm like, because it's my heritage. My face carries history. My nose carries history of my family, etc. I would never
yeah.
do that. Right. So that I don't want to turn it off, etc. So let's get into a couple of things. I want to get into the Pride, LGBTQ, like Pride Month, transgenderism, etc. And then I want to morph that into classroom experiences because I
Yeah.
think it's more shared space. So just for some background from on everything. So Pride, the LGBTQ rights, etc. It seems like that the History Month is actually in October. It says October is LGBTQ plus History Month, but Pride Month is celebrated in June. So here's the thing. As a black person, I'm like, this is what black people say. We're frustrated. We get 1 month, and it's the shortest month of the year. That is like that's what we get in February, Black History Month, and then cut off 2 to 3 days of our month. That's more of a joke. But so I didn't know until I did this research that October was LGBTQ History Month, but I understand Pride Month. So what does Pride Month mean to you? Do you personally do you go to Pride parades, marches? What do you think we should know about Pride Month? Maybe not the history, but just understanding about this month where we're celebrating. Are we celebrating people? Are we acknowledging? What are we doing with Pride?
Yeah. So for me, and I see Pride a little bit differently than a lot of people too in some ways, but for me, when we think about the history, Pride really started because things like police power and and just blatant discrimination and let's see, I'm trying to think of the name of it and I've already forgotten it, which is going to do a disservice to my community, but the Stonewall Inn. And
Stonewall. Okay, go ahead.
is this bar that the police, it's in New York City in Manhattan, and it was especially in the 60s 70s, that's where a lot of like the trans community, a lot of the gay community hung out, and the police raided them because they were for whatever reasons trying to get the transgenders off, get them home, get them out of the public, and so they actually beat and killed a lot of people. And so one trans woman threw a brick at a police officer, and that started a whole riot.
Okay.
And so that kind of is the initial start of Pride, because it was this idea that this is an entire community that has been kind of ostracized and pushed out of the way and criminalized, and that police power used too strongly in much the same ways it is against the like people of color today.
Yeah.
And so Pride Month for me is a way for us to celebrate who we are. That for me is the biggest thing. And so I do go to Pride parades. I'm not actually going to get to one this year, which is very sad for me, but it's just the way it worked out. And when I go, it's really, I have mixed emotions about it, because there's a lot of like marketing for companies and people trying to make money off of it, and all of that feels really dirty to me. But I also love the fact that it's a chance. Last year here in Medellin, the Pride March on July 3rd last year, over 85,000 people attended it.
Nice.
So for here in this city of Medellin's roughly 2.5 million people, just the city of Medellin itself, not the whole metro area. But like for the city of Medellin to host a place where 85,000 people can come and just be who they are and celebrate and be a part of a march, for us, that's really powerful. That's a way for us to say, hey, look, we're here. We are celebrating who we are. We still have to deal with nonsense all the time, and we're not going away. And so this is just a way for us to celebrate who we are and be ourselves. And I have a harder time personally, because I grew up a little bit more conservative than my political views are today. I still struggle personally.
I'm still laughing at the Bernie Sanders thing, man. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was great. I was like crying, laughing at the same time. It was great.
Right, that's hilarious.
And so I still struggle a lot with like trying to understand for myself. There's a lot of pride for me sometimes becomes a little too sexualized. But at the same time, I struggle with like accepting that people can do whatever the heck they want. I don't care what they do. I struggle with this idea, because I understand people's concerns about should kids be seeing some of these things that happen in pride marches. And I personally feel that, because that's how I grew up, and it's deep in my core, and I work on this every day. And I also am like, but also these are people that are ostracized, and they're just trying to be themselves and a part of this community that I think kind of an official term is like gender and sexual minorities is a term that's used now in some of those spaces. And so for me, I still personally, Pride is a tough one, where I actually didn't start attending Pride events until maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And so I'm still learning about those every day too. So Pride for me is really important. It's a chance for me. I put rainbows on my face when I go into the classroom, and but it's more for me to say, look, here's who I am, and I like who I am, and I hope that someday we can all just be who we are and not worry about it. That's what Pride really means to me.
So that's really good, and I'm happy. And you said that's who I am, right? And and remember we were talking about the identification. I'm like, I'm Black, etc. I don't really identify as heterosexual, and I'm like, well, how does my identification as being heterosexual pop up in my life without me knowing it's popping up in my life? And as you were talking, I was actively listening, but I'm also thinking. So I'm like doing it at the same time, and I'm like, wait a minute, my heterosexualness does pop up all the time. You know, as the way I look at women and the way I look at men, like literally look at them, it's different, right? Like they're both people, but you know, my gaze may be a little, it's not probably, it is a little longer at females than it is at guys. It is just the truth, because my attractiveness is there. So therefore, if my attractiveness is there, then some of my leans and my preferences may be that way, etc. So that's how my heterosexualness in a brief way that I could think of it comes up. You mentioned the flag earlier, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what the flag represents, because all flags and their colors, they represent things. So I wanted to get into that, just because we have to educate people on what the flag means, what it represents. So for context, people may not know this, but the United States of America, we have a flag, of course we do. The colors mean something, right? So the red symbolizes hardiness and valor. The white symbolizes purity and innocence. Right there. Have a problem. I'm a Black dude. The purity and innocence part of the flag. Get that out of here. And the blue represents villages, perseverance. And in another word I hate, justice. That's some BS. I'm a Black person. There ain't no justice, but whatever. We'll that another day. And then the pride. So the pride flag, it says created in 1978 by Gilbert Barker, an iconic pride rainbow flag originally had 8 stripes. Those colors included pink, which represented sexuality, red for healing, yellow for the sun, green for serenity with nature, turquoise for art, indigo for harmony, and violet for spirit. That's the research I have, right? So that may be a little dated. This is coming from the Outright international.org in his class of the LGBT community. Is that accurate? Am I pretty close?
Yeah, that was one of the very first ones. And
Okay.
the fun part about the pride flag is it's changed a lot and continues to change today.
Okay. But are we I'm in the ballpark there? Am I general?
Yeah.
I'm close. And what it represents. So you said something about change, and I want to get into that as well. So it's not just like, I love how you guys call it the pride flag, because when I was a kid and I saw it, I was like, that's the gay flag. But it's more than just gay. It's transgenderism, etc. So I was texting you and back and forth, and my whole point is like, hey, I think people should be treated right. They should be treated fairly, etc. Like I am unequivocally on that side. Like, do not persecute people for their personal decisions, right? As long as those personal decisions aren't hurting other people. Right? I'm a heterosexual man. I should not be persecuted because I'm heterosexual, as long as I'm involved myself in sexual acts with consenting adults. Right? Homosexual people should not be persecuted as long as they're performing their life and their sexual acts with consenting adults. Everybody, in my opinion, should be persecuted if they are harming children, etc., like, or rape or something. I don't care if you're heterosexual, homosexual, whatever. Right?
Yep.
So do we agree there that people should be able to do what they want, not be treated terribly for it?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. So where my problem, and I've talked to my friends about this, I text you about it, and we can talk about it for a second. Before we get into, I want to talk about the pride in schools, the pride flag posted, etc. Why I don't have it in my classroom, how you feel about me not having it in my classroom, etc. I actually want to get in that because I'm one of the few teachers that don't have it anywhere, but I don't have any flags up, but we'll talk about it in a second. But my problem with it's not problem, my issue, I guess, with the trans space, and maybe you can speak to this. I know you're not trans, you identify as a man, right?
Yep.
Man,
I'm cisgender. My gender identity matches my biological identity.
See, right there, I'm just a man. I guess you can consider me cisgender, but I would never call myself, I'm just a guy, I'm just a dude, man. Like I was a dude in 81 when I was born, and in 91, and in 2001 and 2011, but now 2021, I'm no longer just a man, I'm a cisgender. Whatever. So my argument is, I don't think we should be, and even with the word gay, gay originally meant happy, etc. I don't think we should necessarily be able to change the definition of words. I have a real problem with that in general, just in life in general. So I don't believe a person that is born with the XX chromosome, which you're a scientist, not me, but I think that produces a female, and that female has a vagina, right? And we're not trying to get sexualized. We're talking about gender. I don't think that person can ever be called male, he, him. That, because the definition of the word, the etymology of the word, etc. Him, he, male, man, means person born with a penis, right? It's a male child, right? And then he, him are the pronouns to pronounce. So just because you feel, not you, but just because a person feels they are something doesn't make that who they are. If I feel like I'm a white person, and I said, hey, I'm a white person, everybody in the world would look at me and be like, he's crazy. He's not white. Clearly, I'm a black person. And I don't think, because somebody may feel like they're born in the wrong body, and I respect that, but it's hard for me to call a person he, him, if they are she, her in their biology. So do you have anything to say about that? Do you have any friends in that space?
I have. We actually had, I'll tell you a little bit about a trans student we actually had this last year too.
Yep, I know who you're talking about. I didn't have that person. I was going to say her, but I didn't have that. See, I was going to just say her because I know who you're talking about, but I have like a glitch in my brain about it. But go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a complicated topic, right? So if we start just by, I have a couple of thoughts. If we start with biology and we talk about XX being female, XY being male, the problem becomes that science has done us wrong. And science has done us wrong by saying those are the only two options. And science has really messed up in a way by educating us in that way and that way only, because there actually are a whole lot of other possibilities other than just XX and XY. And so, for example, I'm not up to date on my genetics, but one of the most it's been a while since I've done some of that, one of the most common ones is Klinefelter syndrome, where you end up with two X's and a Y.
Okay.
And generally, not always, those people end up with the male genitalia. And a lot of people, by the way, with Klinefelter syndrome, it's like 1 in 600 men have Klinefelter syndrome. So 1 in 600 men have two X's and a Y.
Okay.
And most of them only anywhere between 25 and 50% last time I checked, which was a long time ago, so that number might be off. A very small percentage of them actually ever find out that they have Klinefelter syndrome. I might have Klinefelter syndrome and not know it. And so there are a lot of other variations besides XX, XY, there's XX, there's XXY, XXXY, there's XXX, there's all kinds of different things that produce different biological situations. And so there was a situation where, and a lot of these things don't ever actually show up unless you're getting tested for them specifically, or you have another medical condition that shows up.
Yep.
There was a 60-year-old recently, I forget where, I should have looked up some of these details beforehand, but who was having stomach pains, and the doctor's, you probably have a hernia, let's go do some imaging and check this out. And so the guy was like, okay, I've got all this pain from a hernia. Turns out this man with male genitalia also had a uterus.
Wow. Okay.
And so biology does produce situations where, in that case, what kind of are we going to call? Are we going to use he, him, or she, her, or because it's you know what I mean on that situation?
It's complicated.
Like,
it's not black and white. It's not black and white. I understand. Yeah. I understand it's not black and white, but I guess I'm not. So I guess in the 1 out of 600 males who have that, then sure, they can pick. But I am not into people. Okay, and let me fix what I originally said. I am okay with people identifying who are not males as males. I don't want to participate in calling them something that I don't believe that they're not. Like that, like to me, it's a thing. It's a hang up. And I'm not saying that I will never get over it, but as we record this today, it's hard. So I said this story. I have another podcast. I call it the Black Minds Matter podcast. And I said this story on the podcast. And I'll share it with you. This is about a student, not at our school. I know the student you're talking about. And of course, we're not going to name that student, but nope. I know of a student in Texas. Okay. And this student, we're going to change the names for safety, etc. So there's a student who was born Michelle, but Michelle wants to be identified as Michael. And I have a friend of mine who works with this student, and the friend does not believe that, like, in the transgender, like, well, I can't say believe, but just doesn't want to, like, I don't want to call Michelle a him because that's a girl, right? That's a girl. I don't want to. So this is what I told my friend to do. I said, hey man, this is what you do. I said, names aren't genders. Michelle or Michael, it doesn't really matter. It just is, like, just call the person by their name. A name is not like a pronoun. I said, but when it comes to the pronouns, all you do, what I told him to do, be honest, and maybe I was wrong for this, I told him to only refer to the student as the student's name, never he, him, she, her. And I said, the reason you do this is because you never call somebody a pronoun to their face, right? I've never called you, David, he or him to you. When I'm talking about you to somebody else, like who said that? He said that, and I'm pointing to David. But if I'm talking to David, I don't say, hey, he, or hello, him, right? So I told him, I said, so whenever, the principal asks, where is Michael? Don't say he is in the bathroom because you don't necessarily you don't believe in that or whatever it is. But then you don't want to say she because you don't want to get fired. So just say Michael is in the bathroom because you're just saying the person's name. And it's not a disrespect, but there are people who feel like, and let me fix that because this is a truth podcast. There are people, including me, and we feel like we are being forced to say things that we don't agree. We may support the life, but I don't want to call a person who's a girl a boy. I just don't. And I'm being forced to do that. And I think, and from what I listen to, what I read, what I hear from people, That's actually the frustration more than the pride. We can like live your life how you want, but when you're making me change how I talk to people, that's where a lot of friction is happening.
Yeah. My pushback on that would be almost kind of like, and I don't want this to sound crass in any way,
No,
but
please, please.
but
We gotta
almost
learn.
like almost like almost why does it matter? Like why does,
Okay.
because let's take the student we had last year who won't be named or any of that,
Yeah.
but I knew this student many years ago as a female name. We'll call
Mhm.
they don't have, gender is a tough one, right?
Yeah.
For me, and we'll talk about how I see gender here a little bit in a second,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and we had a whole thing where the school brought in a community, and we got to learn about what it was, some experiences of what it's like to be transgender and things like that. And officially the parents supported the student really well, and they changed all of, I'm going to call him because that's what he wants to be called, and they changed all of that in the system, and so his pronouns and his name and all of these things. And even today, if nobody, he's talked to me a lot about his own experiences, if nobody knows that he's trans, he looks like someone who on the binary male female very much looks like a boy.
Mhm.
And so he's even told me that he told me the first time he was so happy that he was out in public with a girlfriend of his, and he was like, yeah, you guys look like some person at the park or whatever was like, oh, you two look like a great couple. Do you want, and the guy looked at the girl, do you want to get your boyfriend a gift or something? And so this guy had no clue that the student was trans, but just identified him based on how he felt and how he looked and things like that. And that for him was like the best day of his life, because he was just like, this is such a great experience to be acknowledged about who he, I'm just gonna say who he is, because
Yeah,
like
no, it's
that's
fine.
what he
It's
goes
fine.
for. And for me, when I think about gender, the problem for me with words is that the point where I would disagree with you on the whole changing of words is that that's kind of what language is, in my opinion. I'm not an expert on language. I am just a scientist. But for me, I feel like language changes all the time, and where, at what point do we say like the use of pronouns is not allowed to change, but some of these ridiculous words that Gen Z are coming up with are now words that.
Well, my pushback to that is we just need a new word. So I don't think you should. So that's my thing. I agree with you about language. We need, so for example, we have on the binary spectrum, right? We have male and female. And now we have trans woman, trans man. So we changed the name. We added trans to it, transitional, right? To change. It's from what I understand. So what I'm okay with calling somebody a trans male or trans female, because it is different than a woman or a man, in my opinion, because woman and man were already taken. So I'm okay with what you're saying. Language grows, but I don't. My general philosophy in life is this: nothing can ever mean what it didn't originally, like what it never originally meant. Exactly. So I always like to use this for example. So I'm a historian. So take the Mona Lisa by Da Vinci. I cannot in 2023 say, oh, the Mona Lisa means this. The only way to know what the Mona Lisa means is to go back, dig up Da Vinci, revive him, and say, you made this, you created it. What does it mean? The originator. So the originator of male, female, him, her, etc. These people were thinking in a binary spectrum, binary mind. So if we are going to call people born with penis who feel like a female, we need a new pronoun. I'm only arguing that him, her, him, he, sorry, denotes male according to the person that created the word. So it's sort of like a nerdy thing I'm doing here.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's come up with a new word. And whatever new word is, then I will call that person a new word. That's what I'm getting at.
I like that. And in terms of like, I see what you're saying. I've never thought about that before. I will then argue
This is good, man. This is
I
what
love
we want
this.
to do here. This is perfect.
I'm just gonna Google this really quickly. List
please
of
do.
pronouns, because we have, and this is the part where I struggle a lot for me, because I'm learning every single day. There are, I won't there are so many new pronouns that are coming to light that are being, I don't know where they're coming from. I have to look up where these things are coming
Right.
from because I don't know. But um like pronouns like XE and I don't know what they all mean. And so I'm really ignorant myself in some of
Yeah.
those things. And so
You can't keep
and
up with them
so
all. It's impossible to keep up with
and so
all.
I feel like that kind of leads down that idea of creating new words.
Yes.
The reason that the other kickback I'll give is kind of my own, the way I see gender is that, so for me personally, I biologically am a male. I feel like a male. I think I identify with the binary male, female, fine for me.
Yep.
Are there days where, for me personally, where I like to do more feminine things, like paint my nails, or,
Yep.
if society was a little bit different, and that's going to be a key point that I just said there, I would be more than happy to wear a dress to work every once in a
Okay.
while. And you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so, but what stops me from doing that a lot is kind of my own societal fears. Like society says that is men don't wear dresses and
Not
things like that. So for
right.
me personally, there are definitely days where I'm like, oh, I feel a little more feminine today. I want to, like, I don't know, I want to put glitter on my face, or
Hmm.
there are things like that.
I, I, I,
For
I float in a feminine space as well because I'm a human and we both have masculine and feminine. I have never once thought in my life, I want to wear a dress today. That is never, like, it's
yeah,
amazing. I'm not saying anything wrong. And I don't think I've ever told you this, but after, like, I didn't know you were gay until like the first couple of months, like when, I came into school in the middle of the year, right?
yeah,
And Summers ended up telling me just in a conversation, just like, oh, and his boyfriend. And I was like, boyfriend, like you were, I was like, what? Didn't click because you don't wear dress. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, you're a guy.
yeah. I'm a very, I don't meet a lot of the check boxes that people think
Yeah,
are stereotypes
yeah.
for gay men. Yeah,
Yeah, you're a guy. When I say what's up, man, and you've never said, I don't identify, like, don't call me that. Like, so I didn't know. It's about that hiding thing you were saying, even though you weren't hiding it, it was not something I can quickly identify.
yeah,
Like, David's a guy, that's a dude, and we just move on. I didn't necessarily think about your sexuality because
yeah,
it's not top of mind. So when I heard it, it wasn't a, well, shock. It was interesting. I was like, really? Like, because
yeah,
none of you, there's a checklist of what's gay.
yeah. Right.
And I had my checklist out and I was looking at you and I'm like, no, he doesn't check any of these
Yeah. And
boxes.
I think you bring up actually a really great point, because I think that's what, when I think about, I'm so grateful actually to have had this student the last 4 years,
Mhm.
because he's really helped me learn a lot. Like, he's taught me so, I learn every day from this kid, and he's not a kid anymore. He's an adult. He's in college and things, but um and one of the things I've really gotten from him is, if I don't, like, that's what kind of the trans community wants. They want to
Mhm.
be looked at and not be like, oh, you're trans. And like that, well, the way you looked at me and said, oh, it doesn't even click in my
Hey,
head.
whatever,
That's what
man.
the trans community wants too, right? They just want to be looked at and just, hey man, how's it going? Or
Right.
whatever, and move on. And I think that kind of where I think is kind of where we all kind of go with
Yeah.
this. And
Well,
yeah,
everybody just wants to be loved and accepted, like you did with your father, right? Like,
yeah,
Dad, I just want to be loved and accepted, and your dad's like, I just want to love and accept you. More hurt there. So, okay, I get it. I think we're gonna call a draw on the gender thing, on the pronoun thing. I'm still dug in for right now. Maybe in
yeah,
future
no,
conversations, my opinion will change. I want transgenders to succeed. If a transgender is a transgender person, they should be treated as, fair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I am so let's get it. Let's talk about kids in this
yeah,
space in education, because we're both educators. So there's a Target, the store Target. I'll name them,
yep,
their public brand, et cetera. If you like some of their stores, and I don't know if all of them, but I know some of them, and I've seen some clips on YouTube, et cetera. You go into their stores and they have the LGBTQ pride, et cetera, different shirts, et cetera, for kids. And when I say kids, I'm like toddlers, like 5 and 7, 5, et cetera. Now, I will be honest, when I was 5, when I was 7, my mom was like, you're a boy. Boys stand up to pee, girls sit down to pee. right? But you're just teaching biology here at this point, right? You can't. So my sister's 2 years older, right? We used to take baths together when we're 3 and 5, but now we're 9 and 7. That's not happening anymore. Like, no, you don't, right? My parents are just doing the best that they could. Now,
Totally.
do I think it's a good thing that they didn't have me taking a bath with my sister at 9? Sure. 9 and 7, 3 and 5, totally different ball game. We're kids. But we're beginning to ask kids to identify. I have a niece, for example. When she was, I'm going to say 11, 12 years old, something like that. Somebody's asking her like, are you gay, straight, or bi? And she was talking to me about it. I was like, well, just tell them you're 12. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just a kid, man. Like, what do you want? So how do you feel about, like, I know you said you identified as 10 at 10. Well, you began to think that you were different. You didn't have a word for it maybe until later. What
Yeah.
do you think we're doing with this, like this kid thing, et cetera? Some people are very uncomfortable with it. I just want to get your
Yeah.
feelings.
I just had a friend down visiting who gave me I hadn't talked to her about this podcast or anything. And she kind of actually asked me because she wanted my opinion, because she has 2 kids who are 3 and 4, I think. And she was really kind of like wanting to know how to talk to her kids about some of these things. And I'm just like, for me, this one's really tricky because I think I kind of go the same route I kind of went earlier. I don't think it's our business to be asking kids what they are. I would never in a million years ask a student, right? I would never ask a student, hey, are you gay? Or is that kid gay? That's just crossing a line for me that I don't feel, it's just not, it's a personal thing that I don't think needs to be discussed with someone so for kids, I think I grew up in a place where I didn't have a lot of education on this thing. So for me, not having a word at 10 might be different than a family that teaches their kids at a younger age what it means to be a part of sexual diversity, or and those, like, I have a friend in the States who from a very early age was like, you know what, taught their kids from a very early age that they could be whoever they wanted, and oh, look, that person has 2 dads, that person has 2 moms, and all this stuff's okay, and kind of putting the words to and having those conversations with kids. I don't think anything's going to make a kid gay. I don't think anything's going to make, like, that's going to happen on its own if it is a thing, right? If it's a thing for them, if that's who they are, that's what they're going to be. I don't think, and it is not one thing in my life that said, oh, David, you're going to be gay. I don't think a shirt when I was 4 was going to change that. I don't like the idea of putting things on kids that put their identities or possible identities or make them say things that they don't know anything about. I struggle with those kinds of things a lot.
Okay.
And so even when I was having this conversation with my friend, I was like, man, I don't really know. It's just in terms of target, I don't know much about this situation. I haven't looked it up. I heard in the background some things, but I wouldn't personally want my kids wearing, hey, I'm gay or I'm trans or those things. But I also don't know personally. I don't know how young a person can know that they're trans or gay, or I just don't know enough of the biology.
You're just 5, man. You're just a kid.
Yeah.
I know maybe I'm old and I know I lean conservatively in a lot of ways, etc. My friends have educated me that I'm a lot more conservative than I've ever realized, which is fine. And I mean, I am what I am. And again, but they're kids. I just like,
I wonder though, the only pushback I'd give on that one is, I think even 5-year-olds start to flirt with girls or
maybe
it's a tough, there's a weird line. I don't know where that all begins though, right?
5 was so long ago. That was literally 36 years ago. I do not remember 5 very much.
I don't either.
But yeah, it's weird. So you said something that I wanted to get your opinion on. So earlier you said something like the adults identify, and this is actually about kids. Adults identify as gay 7 to 8%, and even if let's say we double that for those who don't want to to identify. It would be 14, but let's for conversation say it's 10 to 12%, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I looked up a report in 2021, and it says a report from the CDC released on Thursday, this is 2021, reveals that nearly 1/4 of high school students now identify in the LGBTQ space, based on 2021 data from 17,508 students in 152 schools across the United States. In contrast, 75% identified as heterosexuality. So my question is, as we begin to talk about this more in schools, we're going to talk about our personal preference, our personal situation in our school, and we're going to illuminate that it might be a larger thing, a larger topic, overall. But I actually think we do influence people into maybe trying new things, etc., because we repeat what we see, right? So I believe if 25% of our students, according to the CDC, right, if 25% of our students are identifying as LGBTQ, that's high, man. That's a large percentage. So you would have to ask yourself why. And I would say partly because people feel more comfortable coming out, et cetera. Great. But I also think those people that don't know, they may say, well, I'm going to just identify in the, can I sum it up by the queer community? Can I do that and not get in trouble?
It's fine for me. I don't,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't,
I don't know.
Personally, I have never really identified as queer or being, but I kind of am lumped into that group.
I don't even know what queer means. I just thought it was okay to say it. See, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I'm not trying to be.
Yeah.
If queer is offensive, please forgive me. But I do believe that our media, I believe that our social influence, etc. And I believe, I'll be honest with you, I think there is just there's a praise for LGBTQ now that some kids might want to seek, and they may identify that even though they don't necessarily feel that way, just because it's now cool to be gay or heterosexual or trans. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because 25% is a lot, man. That's high.
Yeah.
High school students.
I wonder, I know, I don't know how that one's tough for me, but I also,
go ahead. I'm gonna put it in the chat for you just so you can, like, if you want to, you can.
Yeah, totally.
You can look it up there, but it's and when you do, sorry for the audio and visual audience here. This is a free flowing conversation, but it's the second paragraph in on that article there again, and it's just that seems high. So I'm like, because if you took a poll in 1995 when I started high school, I bet you it wasn't 25%. So what changed? Yes, the openness and more accepting. I agree with that. But I'm going to be honest with you. I don't believe 1/4 of my classmates at Champaign Central High School, even if you took a silent poll, and even if they were being completely honest, I don't think 25% of us would have said that we are homosexual.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's there might be like maybe an overrepresentation, because I think a lot of people are starting to become more, I don't know the right words to use, maybe flexible with their exploration of their sexuality. And I wonder if, so for me, for example, while I don't want to use the word exploring because I wasn't exploring, I was in survival mode. I actually originally came out as bisexual. And part of that is to kind of hide, to make it, maybe like to make it better that I was still into girls or something like that. Softer landing. Yeah.
Yeah. Softer landing. Yeah. Okay.
So for me, that was more of a survival instinct. But I think today I find, especially in the US, a lot of kids are a lot more open-minded and think when it comes to these kinds of ideas. And I don't have an explanation for it other than maybe when kids are exploring their sexuality, that they're putting themselves into a category that in their exploration they're working with. I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't have a great explanation for that at all.
So yeah, I think we would be naive to believe that sexuality is not a part of that influence, right? If we had we've been having a lot of kids lately with who are being more on like prescription drugs, etc., because of a lot of music is saying that that's something cool. Percocets and et cetera, and Molly's and all of this, and they're being influenced. So I just think that there is some influence there, because 20 years ago, I mean, I was in high school again, like I said earlier, 1995. I think that I know I had some gay people at school, and I could identify, like, they some of them check the boxes, right? Right? That checklist that I have of if he's gay, right? But I don't think it would have been 25%. So we know that. So let's talk about how it infiltrates the classroom, right? Since we're both teachers, are you okay with transitioning to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the at our school, TCS, and in a lot of schools, you'll see the gay pride flag, et cetera, like we were talking about earlier. And a lot of teachers have it in their classroom, and it's like, you're safe here, this is a safe space, et cetera. Now, full disclosure, I do not have the flag in my room. I think from this conversation, people would know, I talked to David as well. Like, I'm not against the LGBTQ community, but I'm not putting the flag in my room. I'm just not going to. But here's the thing. I don't have any flags in my room. I don't have the Black Lives Matter flag in my, I just don't. I just don't do that. I don't fly flags. I wear things that show my beliefs or whatever, and it may be able to cause conversation. For example, for the viewing audience, I have red, black, and green beads. I wear these every day, representative of African Americans and African American culture, and all in our ties to Africa. I wear a pendant, like a little necklace. It has the cross on it. I believe in Jesus. It's just me as a person. And this is weird, but my mom's ashes are in this thing as well, right? We had my mother cremated, and we shared it, but it also has a cross there. So I sort of wear my thing. So I don't wear a Black Lives Matter. I don't fly that flag or whatever. But at our school in particular, that flag the flag has been a point of contention. So you want to talk about that a little bit, from our personal experience, and let people know how you feel about flags being in classrooms and schools.
Yeah, I am on the flip side of that. I put two flags in my room. I fly the progressive pride flag, which is the one with 6 colors, and then it has the arrow, kind of the right arrow going toward the arrow of other stripes going towards the right.
Okay, I have never seen that, sir. Oh, so this is going to sound weird. It sort of looks like the flag of South America. I mean, South Africa flag.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
South Africa. It sort of looks that way with the arrows, etc. Okay, so there's white, pink, blue, brown, black, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Like, you got the whole thing.
Yeah. So it's got the traditional pride flag with the 6 colors, and then it's got, as you go left to right, depending on which version you have, because there's multiple versions of this too. The white and blue and pink are for the trans community. The brown and black are for people of color. And so,
okay, cool. See, education platform, man. You're teaching me. Continue on.
Yeah. So I hang that one is because I feel like it's far more. It helps me justify it a little bit by saying, look at all of the communities I'm including, but also because it's my way of saying, look, it's been just another way for me to say, look, in this classroom, I don't think I have to say it, but as a kid, if I had any, and granted, I went to public schools in the States. As a private school, it's a little bit different situation politically. I mean, maybe not actually, depending on the place. But like, it's my way of just saying, look, I don't have to say it, but here's, for those of you that need to see it, we don't have to talk about it. It's just a symbol that says, look, you're safe here. There's nothing I do that's gonna outright try to be like, hey, you're gay, and looking at a flag is not gonna say, hey, you're gay. And so there's a small group of parents that don't want this kind of influence on their kids. And I would push back them going, I'm not trying to influence anyone. I'm just saying, hey, look, I believe with all my heart and soul, like all the other teachers in the school do, you are safe in this class. I'm just showing it in a way that also represents me, that kind of says that.
Can you explain the word? So I actually had this, we had an administrator I will not name this person just because they didn't give me permission to name them on the podcast, but I was in one of the meetings, and afterwards the administrator came to me and said, it looked like you had something to say, but you didn't say anything. And I said, I didn't, because I have some frustrations, because with the meetings that we have, we talk about a lot of diversity, but the only diversity we're talking about is the LGBTQ diversity. Now we're talking about racial diversity, et cetera, right? So then I'm sitting in here, and I'm going to be honest. This is going to sound awful what I'm about to say, but I'm telling you the feeling of me and other people that I've talked to. I'm sitting in a meeting that I don't need to be in because I'm not discriminating against people. I'm not hurting people, and like you said, all the teachers at the school, we've created a safe space. So sort of, and I just by my personality don't like meetings. Like I just don't.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way.
I don't want meetings. So I was asked, and it's something I want to throw right back to you. It's like, what were you going to say? And I'm like, the usage of the word safe. I was like, I think it's comfortable is the word that people want to use. Again, I'm being a nerdy wordy person, right? And I'm like, are people in class, are homosexual, and they may be, are homosexual people in our school, I may be in other schools, really in fear of their lives? Because where I grew up, safe meant you get to come home at night and not get killed. Safe meant, like, safe is when I'm driving the United States of America and I get pulled over by a police officer as a black person. I don't see, so there's levels of this. There's levels of, and I'm like, are we saying people are like, you can be yourself, it's comfortable? Or is it safe? Because comfort and safe are two different things. So when you say you are safe here, what is that like? What are you actually getting? Are you like physically safe, comfortable? What is it? The word safe.
I would like to be able to include all of those. And so when I think about safe, I think about a student of mine from this last year that identifies as a part of the community, and he was writing a story. They were supposed to write a story about themselves in a way, and he told this story of one of his first crushes. And he came up to me and he was like, I just want you to know I'm gonna write this story, but I'm really scared about how the teacher is gonna look at it. It was a local staff member. He's like, a local staff member, he's been outright homophobic to me, but I'm still gonna write this story, and I want you to know that I'm really scared to write this story.
Okay.
But I'm gonna do it because I think it's the right thing to do. And so for me, when I think about
one quick question, scared of what?
Of that teacher, for him, it was of that teacher taking any sort of action against him for even just telling that story.
Action,
and so
like physical harm or like retribution with grades.
It's more
like
of a
meaner to the person. Like, what do you mean? I know I'm pushing.
Like,
I'm trying to get to the.
No, it's good. It's great. I think he was
fear of life.
No, not fear of life, but more like he was more worried that he would get a lower grade because the teacher didn't like that he was telling and that because this teacher had apparently been openly homophobic before, that he knew that there was potential for some sort of backlash if he told that story.
Awful.
So that kind of goes in the face of what I said earlier, where all teachers are creating the safe space, but at the same time, I don't believe any teacher in our building outright is going to be like, you're gay, this is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
I think there's just a little bit of fear from some students that they're not fully accepted by every single teacher.
Okay. And I could understand that. I'll be honest with you. I don't no, hold on a second. It's not feel. I am not fully accepted as a black male at that school.
Yep.
I'm not fully accepted. Here's the thing. I'm not fully accepted as a black male in education. I don't care to school. Doesn't matter, because the people that you will find least in education are black men. Like, that's actually the truth, right? Now we can get into why and just for the audience, so I can just give you guys some background. I've actually done some studies on this. The reason why black men don't go into education is because black men have such a terrible experience in education as students that they never want to go back into it. I'm the opposite. I had a decent experience, not great, but I want to go back and fix it. Like, right. So you have those people there. So, okay. So the safe space. And then I think, you know my heart, me and you have had conversations, et cetera. I'm a cool guy. At least I think. How do you feel about me not? I'm not going to fly the flag. Summers gave me he bought the pendants once they made everybody take the flags down. Well, a couple of things. One, I went to my classroom one day and they had the small flag in the cutout of the door. I took it off. Like no, but nobody.
I don't know who did that.
Nobody asked me to put it on there, right? That was weird. And then Summers gave me the pendant to where you're safe here, and I didn't wear it. And I'm just and then the other people had the flag, and I just don't. So how do you feel? Do you like if you see me not wearing it as one of the teachers that won't fly the flag, etc.? Do you see me as creating a like, well, maybe Rev is not a person that I can talk to about this issue, etc.? How do you feel about me not flying the flag or other teachers not?
I don't have a problem with not flying the flag. I think I like it as a way to say, hey, kids, obviously, this is my way of saying I'm going to treat you like I treat everyone. I don't have a problem with people not flying the flag. There's all kinds of reasons not to fly the flag, and you've mentioned several of yours. And
Mhm.
to me, not flying the flag is not saying I'm not pro the community.
That's so good. That's so good.
It definitely flying the flag definitely says, hey, look at me
Mhm.
making a public statement.
Mhm.
But it's also every teacher, every person has their own comfort levels, their own reasons, their own rationalities, and things like that. And I respect all of those. Like I would, as long as for me, I don't think a teacher needs to fly a flag. This
Mhm.
might be controversial, but I don't think a teacher needs to. This is going to agree with our superintendent a little too much, maybe. Uh, I don't think a teacher needs to fly a flag to be able to create a safe environment for all
Okay.
students. I
Well,
100% believe that. I don't need, if it were just me, and I told my students this once when they asked me about the flag situation. If it were just for me, if I had that flag on the wall just for myself to say, hey, look, this is who I am. I don't care about any of the rest of you. And
mhm.
they said, David, you have to take that flag down. I would take it down in a heartbeat. But
Mhm.
for me, it's more of a symbol for all of my students to say, hey, even though this is who I am,
Mhm.
but you don't know, well, then my students know. But if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know.
Remember,
But
I
also,
didn't know. I didn't know for
right?
the first. Yeah, I didn't know. It was news to me.
Exactly. And so it's my way of saying, look, you can assume you don't know, but also like you're fine here is basically. And I don't think a teacher needs to fly a flag to say that. It's just for me, just another way to enforce it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And again, I believe I create a safe space. Well, I know I do because I haven't gotten any parent complaints. And we know the parents at a private school, they
Oh
will
yeah.
complain, right?
Yeah.
And the students, and I haven't heard from other teachers, you don't make students feel comfortable. I just have a rule in my classroom. Disrespect will not be tolerated.
Yeah.
I don't care what, and I just leave it at that. It's not disrespect of gay, it's not disrespect of etc. And when we're at our meeting, so I counted just unscientifically, but I counted 5 different meetings this year about the flag or LGBTQ in the school. And my
And you've
frustration,
counted 5. I've been at least 10.
yeah. So
Yeah.
in my frustration was that again they were talking about diversity. Now, when I say my frustration, now I am going to speak for the rest of the Black teachers because we talk and we're like, no, 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 this is not okay because when they're talking about diversity, like I don't want to. This is going to sound bad. I don't want to put. I'm not saying that LGBTQ is not a part of the like breaking ground in diversity, etc. But when you begin to say that, then like, well, people are like, well, I'm not included. You're not talking about my group, etc. Right? So we just want to. I just want to say that while we're doing this, there's a lot of groups that feel marginalized. There's a lot of groups that feel,
Yep.
etc. And right now, there seems to be a push here. At our school in particular, I know we're at an international school in Colombia, but it was like there. I don't see anything done for the mistreatment of Afro Colombians. They're
Yep.
mistreated all the time, right?
Yep.
It is. It's terrible, but I don't see anything. Maybe because we don't have any in the school, but you do got Black people at the school, at least some teachers, right? Nothing is done there, etc. So I try to just create the space of everybody is welcome
Yep.
without necessarily pointing out a particular group. Does that
Yep.
make sense? Because when you put the flag might be saying everybody's welcome, but it's really saying it's pointing out LGBTQ, you're accepted here, right? So the reason
Right.
I don't fly it because I just want to make it for everybody. And I've had, and we're working in a machismo society still, right?
Super.
Archaic,
Yep.
if you will. And some of the kids. So, for example, we're talking about the Holocaust, and in one of my classes, and they're like, 6 million Jews were killed. I'm like, right, but you got it was more than that. Gypsies, this, and homosexuals. And one of the boys said, good. And I stopped at a meeting. And I said,
Oh man.
right, but I don't. when I talked to him, I stopped him in class, corrected it. Then after class, had him come talk to me. And I was like, I almost said his name and I don't want to, but this
Yeah.
kid, right? Let's call him Jonathan. There are no Jonathans at our school. At least I don't think so.
No,
So
that I know of.
yeah. So I was like, Jonathan, when you say good, you're telling people in your class that might be a part of this community that you would think it's okay if they got gas in a gas chamber. And I said, Jonathan, whether you realize it or not, there's somebody in your family, somebody that you love that
Yep.
identifies this way, but you make it to where they don't want to tell you, because if they tell you, they think you might want them to go to a gas chamber. And I
Yep.
said, the problem is you love the person, but as soon as they tell you that they want to date men, or they're a girl and they want to date women, your love is going to turn off. And I could see the light bulb going off in his head. And he's like, oh, but I can tell he didn't mean it, the bad thing in his heart. It was a knee-jerk reaction, right?
Yep.
It was, they gassed homosexuals too. Good. It was like, I couldn't even get the word out of my mouth before good, just sort of like what your dad did when you were a kid.
Yep.
Knee-jerk reaction. You better never bring a boy home. But we know now, 21 years later, your dad never really meant that.
Right.
Just said it in a reaction. So we do have that problem, not only at our school, and I think our school might be a microcosm for a lot of schools throughout the world. The LGBTQ community, I know you guys, and I'll say it that way, like the people there are marginalized, they're treated negatively, and hopefully this conversation will help people understand better. That's what we haven't answered. I think we've probably produced more questions than answers.
I agree.
But
Yeah.
it's good because you can see a gay man who has his nails painted with LGBTQ colors, the flag, and a heterosexual man who does not, who believes you should be treated well, but doesn't understand all the things that come with it, have a peaceful educational conversation, right? And maybe this will be an example for other people to begin to bridge the gap and have those conversations.
Totally.
Yeah. So thank you. I don't have anything else. David, do you have anything you want to tell the people about, anything you're doing, social media? Maybe they want to reach out to you. If you want to share your email address, you can, whatever, or you don't have to, but I just want to give you the opportunity to, have any last remarks, words, or promote anything that you have going on in your life.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add on to that. If people do want to reach out to me, my Instagram handle is probably the best way to go for that. Okay. And that would just be at David_Schaas, SCHAS.
Okay.
And that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, actually.
Cool, man. Well, David, you're a good people. I appreciate you, man. I really do. And you just being so open, and you sharing these stories, and I now understand why the word brave is being used when it comes to people coming out. Before this conversation, I didn't. When you talked about the story about your dad, when you said we hide it because we don't want to lose people. So that's the bravery that comes with it. And coming out, being public with it, the public scorn that you might receive. I never really understood it. I didn't, but this conversation has helped me. So I really appreciate you, man. Hopefully we did some good work in the community and we've helped some people learn a little bit. So thank you for joining the Revelations podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.